Zala stood frozen at her own front gate. Music pounded from inside. Balloons hung across the porch, and a giant banner read, "Congratulations, Fari, on your new home." Strangers danced on her floors, plates of food scattered across the counters. But it wasn't just the celebration that made Zala's chest tighten. It was her sister, Fari, standing proudly in the middle of the crowd, giving a speech as if she had bought the house. Zala clenched the keys in her hand, her silence about to shatter in the loudest way possible. Zala lived a life where no one believed in her. Every morning she left home before sunrise and came back late at night, working small jobs that most people looked down on. Her family often laughed at her and said she would never achieve anything. They thought she would always depend on them for the rest of her life. But Zala never argued back. She kept her dreams to herself, hiding the truth behind her quiet smile. She wanted freedom. She wanted a place she could call her own, where no one could look down on her again. So while everyone thought she was wasting her time, Zala was saving. Every coin, every note she kept aside. She denied herself new clothes, ignored parties, and even ate the simplest meals so she could put more money away. Her family didn't notice her sacrifices. They assumed her silence meant weakness. When her younger sister Fari mocked her, saying she would never afford even a single room, Zala simply smiled and said nothing. But inside, she held on to her dream tightly. She knew one day all her quiet sacrifices would speak louder than the cruel words thrown at her. At night, when the house was silent, Zala would open her little box of savings, count each bill slowly, and whisper to herself, "One day, I will walk into my own home." It wasn't just money she was building. It was her strength, her courage, and her proof that she was more than what people thought of her. Her dream was not loud or flashy. It was silent, like the steady flame of a candle that never went out. And with every passing year, it grew brighter inside her. She didn't need to prove herself with words. She would prove herself with results. For Zala, independence was not just about having a house. It was about breaking free from doubt, from the voices that told her she was nothing. And so, she worked harder, saved more, and kept her secret safe. She was building something no one could see yet, but soon, everyone would. Fari was everything Zala was not in the eyes of their family. She was flashy, bold, and always surrounded by friends who admired her beauty and style. She wore the latest clothes, carried expensive handbags, and loved to show off in front of neighbors. Whenever she entered a room, she made sure all eyes were on her. And she made sure Zala felt small. Fari often laughed at Zala's plain dresses and simple shoes. She would say in front of everyone, "Look at my sister, always struggling, always dreaming of things she can never afford." People laughed along, and Zala kept quiet, never defending herself. Fari loved those moments because they gave her power. She would tell relatives and friends that Zala would never own anything important in life, not even a small piece of land. Their parents never corrected her. Instead, they admired Fari's boldness. When visitors came, they praised Fari's beauty and style, saying she would marry rich one day. Meanwhile, they looked at Zala with pity and worry, asking why she worked so hard when she had nothing to show for it. Without knowing it, they encouraged the rivalry between the sisters. They fed Fari's pride while planting more doubt in Zala's heart. But Zala never argued back. She sat silently, listening to every word, every laugh, every careless comment. She carried those words inside her, not as weakness, but as fuel. Her parents and sister saw her silence as proof that she was failing. But in truth, Zala was stronger than they knew. She allowed Fari to shine in the spotlight, while she worked in the shadows. Fari enjoyed telling stories to friends about how she would live in a big house, drive a fine car, and leave Zala behind in their parents' old home. She said it so often that people began to believe her. The family circle whispered that Zala would always remain the struggling one, and Fari would be the success. Yet behind her calm face, Zala was writing her own story. Every insult became a reminder of why she was working so hard. Every laugh from her sister became another reason to save one more coin. She knew the day would come when the truth would turn the tables. And while her family doubted her, she never doubted herself. Zala had carried her dream in silence for so long that when the day finally came, her hands trembled as she signed the final papers. After years of sacrifice, she was now the proud owner of her own home. No one knew what she had been planning, not even her closest relatives. She had hidden her efforts so well that her family still believed she was just a struggling woman with no future. But behind that quiet face, Zala was already holding the keys to freedom. The house was not grand like the ones her sister Fari boasted about, but it was strong, beautiful, and truly hers. Every corner spoke of her hard work, the walls, the windows, the doors. It was a place built not by luck or inheritance, but by long nights and endless days of pushing forward when no one believed in her. When the agent placed the deed in her hands, Zala felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She smiled, but not the kind of smile that needed applause. It was a smile of peace, the smile of someone who had finally proved herself, even if no one else knew it yet. She decided to keep everything a secret. She didn't want anyone's doubts, jealousy, or fake praises to spoil her joy. Zala knew her family too well. If she announced it now, Fari would find a way to twist it, their parents would take sides, and what should be her moment? A victory would turn into another argument. So she stayed quiet, keeping the keys in her bag and the papers tucked safely away. Each day after work, instead of going home directly, Zala would sneak over to her new house. She would unlock the door, step inside, and walk slowly through the rooms. She imagined where her bed would be, where she would sit to drink tea, how she would decorate the walls. Sometimes she would sit on the bare floor and let herself dream about the life waiting for her there. She didn't need an audience for this joy. She wanted to enjoy it alone until the right time came. The plan in her heart was simple. She would settle in first, prepare the house properly, and then invite her family and friends for a grand surprise. She wanted them to see the proof with their own eyes, not through her words. For once, she wanted her actions to speak for her. Zala guarded her secret carefully. No one suspected a thing, not even Fari who mocked her daily. But Zala knew the day was coming when all those laughs would turn to silence. And in that silence, her truth would shine brighter than any words ever could. The morning Zala chose to move into her new home was the happiest she had ever felt. She packed her few belongings neatly, tied them together, and hired a small truck to take them. As the vehicle rolled closer to her street, her heart beat with excitement. This was the day she had dreamed of for years. The day she would finally step into her own home as its true owner. But when the truck turned the corner, Zala froze. Bright balloons floated at the gate, colorful ribbons hung across the fence, and loud music poured out from inside. At first, she thought it must be her neighbor celebrating something. She leaned out of the truck and stared, wondering why the decorations were on her gate instead. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was a mistake, but the banner hanging above the porch left her speechless. The banner carried her own family name written boldly for everyone to see. Children ran in and out of the compound. Women carried trays of food, and men clapped their hands in rhythm to the music. Zala's chest tightened. She told herself it couldn't be true. Maybe the truck had stopped at the wrong house. Maybe she was still dreaming. But then she heard it. Her sister Fari's voice, loud and clear, echoing over the crowd. "Welcome everyone. Today we celebrate a new chapter in my life. This is my home now, and I'm proud to say hard work has finally paid off." Fari's words cut through Zala like a knife. People cheered and called her name, praising her success. Zala sat still in the truck, gripping the edge of her seat, her breath heavy. It felt unreal, like the world had shifted beneath her feet. She slowly climbed down and walked closer, still hoping there was some misunderstanding. But every detail told her the same story. Her house, her gate, her name, but her sister standing proudly in the middle of it all as if she were the rightful owner. Strangers filled the living room, eating, laughing, and clapping for Fari. Zala's hands tightened around the small bag that carried her documents. Her dream home, the one she had built in silence, was now being paraded as someone else's achievement. She had imagined this day so differently. Quiet joy, peaceful moments, a soft beginning. Instead, she was standing in the middle of a crowd that celebrated a lie. In that moment, Zala knew her silence could no longer protect her. Something inside her was about to break, and the truth was ready to come out. Zala stepped quietly into the house that was supposed to be her sanctuary. The rooms she had dreamed about for years were now filled with strangers eating and laughing as if they owned the place. Plates of food lined the tables, children played across the floor, and neighbors whispered with admiration. But at the center of it all was her sister, Fari, dressed in a glittering gown, standing tall with a glass in her hand. "Fari, raised her voice so that everyone could hear. This house is proof that if you work hard and believe in yourself, you can achieve anything. Today I stand here, proud of myself, proud of what I've built, and proud to share it with you all. The crowd clapped, some even shouting her name, and she smiled widely, enjoying every second of the attention. Zala's heart sank. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. These were her walls, her floors, her doors, but someone else was taking the credit. She had imagined walking into this home quietly, arranging her furniture, and sitting in peace. Instead, her own sister was performing in front of a crowd, lying boldly without shame. Fari continued her speech, moving from one guest to another, boasting about her struggles that never existed. She told them how many sacrifices she had made, how long she had worked to finally afford such a beautiful home. Guests nodded with respect, some even telling her she was an inspiration. Every word stabbed Zala deeper, because she knew the truth behind each lie. At one point, Fari walked into the kitchen, pointing at the cabinets saying, "I chose every detail myself. It wasn't easy, but nothing good comes easy." She said it with pride, as though she had lifted every stone with her own hands. And the crowd followed her, admiring what they believed was her achievement. Zala stood silently near the doorway, clutching her bag tightly. She wanted to scream, to tell them all that the woman they were praising was nothing but a fraud. But her voice was trapped in her throat. The shock was too heavy, the betrayal too sharp. All she could do was watch as her sister bathed in glory that did not belong to her. Every laugh, every cheer, every clap made Zala's silence harder to bear. She had spent years working for this moment, yet here was Fari stealing it with a single lie. And as Zala's eyes scanned the room, seeing her family nodding proudly at Fari, she realized she was standing at the edge of a breaking point. Zala stood frozen near the doorway, watching the scene unfold as if it were a play she had no part in. Her own house, the one she had worked for in silence, was now filled with laughter that did not belong to her. Every clap for Fari, every cheer, felt like a stone thrown at her chest. She realized that her silence, the same silence that had once been her strength, had now become her weakness. By staying quiet, she had allowed her sister to steal the moment that should have been hers. Her eyes moved to the walls, the ones she had dreamed of painting with her favorite colors. She looked at the floor, the one she had pictured herself walking across every morning. Everything here was hers, but her voice was missing. And in that moment, Zala felt a fire rise inside her, a fire too strong to hold back anymore. Her hand tightened around her bag, where the papers rested safely, the deed, the receipts, every single proof of ownership. Slowly, she reached inside, pulled them out and held them firmly. Her legs shook as she took her first steps forward, but her resolve grew stronger with every stride. She no longer cared about the eyes staring at her, or the whispers that followed. She knew this was the moment to reclaim what was hers. The laughter in the room slowly faded as people noticed her standing there. Zala's figure was no longer hidden in the corner. She was in the center now, papers clutched in her hand, her face steady and unshaken. Fari turned, surprise flashing across her face. For a second, she tried to keep smiling, but the sight of the documents in Zala's hand made her expression falter. Without saying a word, Zala lifted the papers high for everyone to see. The seal, the signatures, the official stamps, they were clear proof. Guests gasped, leaning closer, their cheerful faces now clouded with confusion. Silence spread through the room like a wave, and the music suddenly felt out of place. Zala's voice finally broke through. Calm, but firm, she said, "This house is mine. I worked for it, I saved for it, and I bought it. These are the papers that prove it." Her words cut through the air, leaving no space for doubt. Every eye turned to Fari, waiting for her response, but she stood frozen, unable to speak. In that single moment, Zala's silence ended. She had taken back her voice, and with it, the life she had fought so hard to build. The silence after Zala's words was heavy. For a moment, the crowd did not know what to do. Then a wave of gasps filled the room as she opened the documents wide for all to see. The bold letters of her name were written clearly on the deed. The mortgage papers carried her signature, and the receipts told the story of every payment she had made. There was no mistake. This was her house, and there was no denying it. Guests who had been clapping for Fari only moments earlier now leaned forward, whispering to one another, The admiration that had filled their eyes began to fade, replaced by shock and confusion. Plates were set down, music stopped, and the cheerful chatter turned into an uncomfortable silence. One by one, people moved closer, wanting to see the proof with their own eyes. Fari's smile cracked. She forced a laugh, trying to brush it off. "Oh, come on. This is just a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "We're sisters, we share everything." I was only speaking on her behalf. But her voice shook, and her words lacked the confidence she usually carried. Zala stood firm, her papers held steady in her hand. She didn't need to shout, because the truth was already louder than any lie. She let the crowd take in the evidence. Some nodded slowly, already convinced. Others stared at Fari with wide eyes, waiting for an explanation that never came. One elderly neighbor finally spoke up. "But Fari, you told us this was your house. You said you worked hard for it." The room grew tense. All eyes shifted toward her, pressing for an answer. Fari stuttered, her hands trembling as she tried to find the right words. I only wanted to inspire everyone," she muttered. "I was joking really. Can't you see? It was just a celebration for my sister." But her excuses fell flat. No one laughed, no one clapped. The admiration that once lifted her now crushed her with shame. Zala did not need to argue. She let her sister's lies collapse under their own weight. The people who had once cheered for Fari now whispered about her deception. The celebration that had been filled with joy only minutes ago was now heavy with disappointment. In that moment, Fari was unmasked in front of everyone. The spotlight she had stolen so easily was gone, and all that remained was the truth shining clearly in Zala's hands. The room was still tense when their parents hurried forward, trying to calm the storm. Their mother forced a shaky smile and clapped her hands lightly, saying, "All right, everyone, let us not make this a big issue. We are family. What belongs to one belongs to all." Maybe Fari only spoke too quickly. She glanced nervously at the guests, hoping to save face. Their father joined in, nodding. Yes, let us not embarrass ourselves in front of outsiders. It is just a misunderstanding. What matters is that the house is in the family." But Zala's eyes did not soften. For years she had listened to those same words. Words used to dismiss her pain. Words used to cover up the insults she endured. This time she would not allow it. She took a deep breath and stepped closer, her documents still in hand. "No," she said firmly, her voice steady. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is my life. I worked for this house. I sacrificed for it. And I will not stand here and let my sister or anyone else take away what I have earned." The crowd murmured, their attention now fixed on her. Fari shifted uncomfortably, her face pale, but their parents quickly spoke again. "Zala, please," her mother whispered. "Do not create more trouble. You know how your sister is. She only wanted to celebrate. Let it go." Their father added, "Yes, your silence has always kept peace in this family. Keep it that way. People are watching." Zala's chest tightened. Peace. Was it peace when she was mocked for wearing simple clothes? Was it peace when her sister told neighbors she would never own anything of her own? Was it peace when her parents smiled and allowed Fari to laugh at her sacrifices? She looked at them with a calm that surprised even herself. "I have kept silent for years," she said. "And in that silence, I was treated as less. You let her humiliate me. You let her voice drown mine. And you called it peace. But today I will not be silent. Today you will hear me." The guests nodded slowly, many of them remembering times they had witnessed Fari's pride and Zala's quiet endurance. It was clear now who had been wronged. Their parents' attempt to smooth things over only deepened the shame. For once, the sympathy in the room did not belong to the glamorous daughter. It belonged to the one who had endured in silence, who now stood tall with truth in her hands. Zala's words settled heavy in the air. She had not only exposed her sister's lies, but also reminded everyone of the years she was belittled. Her parents lowered their eyes, embarrassed, realizing that their attempt to protect appearances had only revealed how much they had failed to protect her dignity. The silence in the room broke slowly, like a wave turning into thunder. One by one, the guests began clapping, their eyes fixed not on Fari anymore but on Zala. The same people who had earlier cheered for Fari's proud speech now nodded with respect at the sister who had been quiet for too long. Their applause grew louder, echoing through the hall, until it was clear who truly deserved the honor. For the first time in her life, Zala stood at the center, not as a shadow, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman who had fought and won with her own hands. Fari's face twisted in disbelief. Only minutes ago, she had been basking in praise, raising her chin as if she alone carried the family's pride. Now those same eyes that once adored her refused to meet her gaze. Some guests even whispered, shaking their heads at her arrogance. Humiliation burned her cheeks, and with clenched fists, she stomped her foot. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice trembling. "You are all making a mistake." But no one stopped clapping. No one came to her defense. Her parents tried to call her back, but Fari couldn't stand it. The attention she loved so much was gone, ripped away in a moment of truth. She stormed out of the room, her heels striking against the floor in anger, leaving behind nothing but silence and shame. The grand exit she once dreamed of came, but not as glory. It was in defeat. Meanwhile, Zala remained where she was, the document still in her hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The applause was no longer just noise, it was justice. Every clap carried the weight of the years she had swallowed her pride. Every nod of approval wiped away a moment of humiliation she had endured. She didn't need to shout or fight anymore. The truth had spoken louder than Fari's lies. The spotlight that once favored the proud sister now belonged fully to Zala. A few guests stepped forward, congratulating her warmly, praising her courage, telling her how inspiring her journey was. Some even admitted they had believed Fari's stories before, but could now see the truth for themselves. For Zala, this was sweeter than anything she could have planned. In that moment, she realized she had gained more than applause. She had gained respect, dignity, and freedom. She had turned years of being looked down upon into a single victory that no one could erase. The sweet justice wasn't just in Fari's downfall. It was in Zala finally standing tall as the rightful owner, the rightful voice, and the rightful daughter whose worth could no longer be denied. The room was still buzzing when Zala walked to the doorway and stood tall, her hand resting gently on the frame, as if she were anchoring herself to the place she had dreamed of for years. The clapping softened, and all eyes turned to her again. This time, there was no doubt, no confusion, no chance for her voice to be drowned out. She looked at the crowd, at the faces that once pitied her, at the parents who had underestimated her, and at the empty space where Fari had stormed out. Then she took a deep breath and spoke clearly, every word carrying strength. "This home was built on sacrifice, not lies," she said. Her voice didn't waver. It rang through the air, calm but firm, as if the walls themselves needed to hear the truth. A hush spread as everyone leaned closer, waiting for what she would say next. "Let this moment remind you all, silence does not mean weakness. I stayed quiet for years, but not because I had nothing to say. I stayed quiet because I was building. I was working. And today, I stand in my own home, not as a shadow, but as proof that hard work speaks louder than gossip." For a moment no one moved, then the room erupted with cheers, louder than before, this time raw and genuine. The guests clapped, some even shouted her name, and the sound filled the house like a blessing. Strangers who had once believed Fari now admired Zala with shining eyes. They weren't just celebrating her ownership of the house. They were celebrating her courage, her perseverance, and her triumph over years of being underestimated. Her parents shifted uncomfortably at first, their embarrassment written all over their faces. But even they couldn't deny the power of the moment. They lowered their heads slightly, realizing their silence had helped Fari's lies grow. Zala didn't look at them with anger, just quiet strength, as if saying, "I no longer need your approval." As the cheers echoed around her, Zala stepped forward into the house, reclaiming every corner that had been stolen by lies just moments ago. She wasn't just walking into walls of brick and stone. She was walking into her dignity, her pride, her long-awaited victory. People followed her, praising her, touching her shoulder, telling her how inspiring she was. For the first time, she felt seen, not as the quiet daughter who lived in her sister's shadow, but as a woman who had carved her own place in the world. That night, as the guests left, the echo of their cheers still lingered in the air. Zala stood once more at her doorway, looking at her home with tearful eyes, knowing it was more than a house. It was her triumph, her claim, her answer to every doubt she had ever faced. And this time, the spotlight was hers to keep.